Howdy, howdy, everyone. Welcome to OfficeHours.fm episode number 99. 99 is just one episode away from 100. I have got Justin Ferriman, co-founder of LearnDash, on the show today. Justin, how are you?
I'm good, Carrie. Thank you, first of all, for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be talking about all kinds of things today. Mainly like to focus on your transition from what you were doing before LearnDash into actually sort of making that leap and deciding to run with that product idea. Before we get into the good stuff, would like to give a quick shout out to my sponsors. We've got Secure WordPress by Network Solutions, and we've also got Pantheon, a WordPress hosting provider focusing on high traffic sites. I'm going to tell you more about both those guys in a little while. Also, wanted to announce that if you haven't seen it yet, we're doing a big old giveaway as part of our 100th episode celebration. Excuse me. It's so exciting to tell you about. I have to take a deep breath before I can communicate it. Okay, we've got over $1,000 in prizes. We've got Rebecca Gill's SEO to the Top course. It's like $400. We've got a Know the Code with Tanya Mort, the Pro Plan. We've got the Utility Pro Developers License. We've got, what else do we have in there? We've got an Amazon gift card. We've got some podcast swag. That's right, swag is on the way. So head over to the OfficeHours.fm website if you haven't entered that yet. And please do. You've got 6 more days to get up on that. So, okay. now we're ready. Okay. So, Justin, we were just chatting, and you're up in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yep.
Where I have never been.
Where you need to go.
Where I need to go. Yes, I'm going to have to add it to my list. So I only actually met you recently. You reached out via email, after seeing the article I wrote on Rebecca's SEO course. And
yep.
You had, I don't know, just the tone of your email or what you said, it was pretty obvious that you're someone who's passionate about education and learning and teaching. And I was like, I got to get this guy on the show. For people that have not had the chance to meet you, can you give us the Justin rundown, kind of your story?
Sure. I'll give the Reader's Digest version. I am currently co-founder of a company called LearnDash, and we offer a premium WordPress plugin that makes it easy for people to create and sell online courses. And prior to that, I was heavily involved in the e-learning industry. I was a consultant for a large consulting firm, and my day-to-day was standing up online training programs for large corporations, and learning management systems, and creating the e-learning and everything that goes into instructional design. And then I think it was 2012. I was on a project, and we were talking about which LMS we were going to use for the client, and open source LMS kind of came up, and there's a couple out there, and they're still out there now. And so I started doing research, and WordPress was a hobby at the time, but I did some research to see if anything existed on WordPress. I was just curious, and there was nothing. So at that point, I started a blog. That was March 2012, and it wasn't called LearnDash at the time. It was wplms.org, I think, and just started talking about the concept of learning management on WordPress, because it's pretty conducive to online courses across a variety of situations, be it in standard education like schools, classrooms, or corporations, franchise training, bloggers even that want to sell a course. So started writing about that, started writing about the concept of a WordPress LMS, gained a following, built an email list, and my wife and I were talking about it and decided to move forward with, having this created and making it a reality. So did a lot of market research during this time, talking with people on the phone and in my off hours. And eventually in January 2013 is when we launched, and a few months after is when I transitioned into it full time.
Wow. So basically a year from when you started blogging to when you launched?
Yeah, it's I probably have the least romantic startup story of all time. It's not anything you're going to see in entrepreneur.com or anything like that where, I wasn't like eating ramen and quitting my job or anything. I was working 12-hour days in consulting, and I go back to the hotel room and start blogging and, mapping out features later on down the road. But it was a slow process, and, because I had real bills to pay. And, over time, though, became more confident in the offering, and we knew we at least wanted to get it out there and then kind of see what happened. And there was a point where I wanted to take that chance to bring it on full time.
So you said you were doing market research when you were, looking at surveying available LMSs in the role that you were in, and sort of noticed a gap in the space. Yeah. Was your market research then for outside of WordPress LMSs, or?
Yeah, it's kind of two areas. And I think this is very indicative of where LearnDash is today, and that's that we have an influence in maybe the standard learning and e-learning space, as well as a presence in WordPress. So, and we enjoy being in both those camps. But as far as the market research went, yeah, it was in maybe not the WordPress specific route, just with people that I knew that in the industry, talking to them about open source LMSs and the scalability and how feasible that would be for clients to jump on board, and what are the size of those clients, and then also from the WordPress space, it was more looking at the traditional, obviously there's the membership models and the membership plugins that do a great job, and where does where would a learning management system plugin, WordPress LMS as I was calling it, where would that fit into that that industry, and how that market space, how could it carve its own niche out of there, and if there was a demand and people actually looking for maybe the more the more specific feature sets that maybe we were advertising. So yeah, it was kind of in two areas, and so there was traction in both, and that's what was encouraging. I would get emails. Sometimes somebody would reach out on LinkedIn or something. They would have like this big, huge wish list of things because they wanted to implement it at their company. And so that was obviously less WordPress specific. But then I would get, people writing saying, "Hey, make sure you integrate with, WooCommerce or something like that." So obviously that's a little bit more of the WordPress side.
So was there ever a point where you felt like you needed to validate the idea of the learning management system, or was that just sort of a given based on your industry knowledge, and then it was a matter of figuring out what the exact feature set would be?
Yeah, good question. Nothing in entrepreneurship is really a given, so there's always going to be a little bit of risk in taking a chance. It's kind of funny. I think it was in October of 2012, we were progressing with this idea that we had in this project we had, and we found out that WooThemes was creating at the time an LMS theme. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's kind of in line with what we're doing. And sure enough, they switched it to a plugin, and which was scary, because here we just wanted to start, we just wanted to get something on the ground, and you have arguably the biggest name in WordPress that was going to do something similar before us with all the resources they have. But we were confident in our approach in the time that we did put in, and in some ways it was validating to see WooThemes approach that space as well. So it was maybe for half a second intimidating, but then invigorating, because then it meant we got to really get after it and have somebody also validate the ideas that we've been working on for months ahead of time.
It is sort of oddly encouraging when you see someone else executing on a same or similar idea. Then you're not just a nut out there. Maybe there's a reason nobody's doing those things yet. Cool. Okay. Well, I've got some questions coming up here from the folks that are tuning in live. By the way, if you are listening live, use the hashtag OfficeFM on Twitter, or you can use the Google Q&A app. So your wife is a co-founder with you over at LearnDash. What's her role versus your role? Like, how does that kind of break down?
Yeah, it's a good question too. A lot of this, having conversations and talking about LearnDash, I kind of take on that role. She's more of a behind the scenes person. It was actually when we had launched, she was finishing up her grad school degree at the University of Michigan. And so it just kind of made sense for her to slot right into what we are doing. And so she does a lot with support, the documentation, and then also just supporting the individuals. We have different complementary styles in the way that we support, but we also have our strengths and weaknesses. So she is really good at helping people that are maybe just confused or need an extra little hand holding. So she kind of leads those efforts. I do a lot of blogging and talking about the e-learning industry, and so that's something that I like to do. I like writing, so taking on that part of it, I've always done. So there's some overlap, but then we each kind of have our own things that we have our strengths into.
This is a slightly out of left field question, but do you feel like your blogging and the time that you have spent on content creation has played a significant role in the success of LearnDash?
I think so. Actually, I know so. And just a case in point, before we even launched, I knew that in order to maybe feel more comfortable in launching, I couldn't just launch to crickets. Like, hey, we're available. Buy our software, and then there's no one there that even knows it. So, in order to do that, just started writing about the industry in hopes that I could validate the idea, but two, to build an email list. Pretty basic. I just had like a little opt-in bar at the top, like, hey, if you find out, we'll email you when WordPress LMS or whatever I was calling it at the time is available. And when we launched in that January, we had a few thousand people on that list. So we immediately had customers. We immediately had feedback on what we were doing, and that was a huge part of the success. And that wouldn't have been possible without blogging.
Man, so many questions I have just from me, but I'll ask some questions from Twitter. Jackie says, "What surprised you the most about your launch and growth for LearnDash?"
I don't know if I was surprised. One of the exciting things was that first sale. It's so stupid when I look back on it now, because I said we were going to launch on like a certain day, and in many ways WooThemes kind of played our hand. We were getting close to being launched, and they launched like the week before us their offering. So I was like, we have to go at the same time. And I said like, oh, we're going to launch on like a certain day, and I did it like midnight that day, which is like so stupid. It's so terrible. But we ended up making a sale from a list that I had in this like kind of competition I had set up for anybody that was subscribed to the list, and that was the most exciting. The growth, the surprising part of the growth is when LearnDash comes up in places that aren't so WordPress specific. So we were included, and there's just I think it was an article, I forget where, but we were included in a list of like the top 5 LMSs you may not know, and it was just very traditional learning management systems, and then it said WordPress plus LearnDash in that list, and that was surprising, because it's a huge win for, obviously it's nice to see LearnDash there, but for WordPress that in the e-learning space, considering that prior to launch I was asking people in the field, and they're like, what's WordPress? So it was that's kind of been surprising, and we get a kick out of that stuff.
That's funny. Yeah, so you're educating the e-learning folks on schooling them on WordPress.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So when you launched, and I love that you launched at midnight, I'm sure that studies show that's the worst time of day.
Oh, yeah, isn't that...
Second and only to 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Yeah.
Don't hang out your shingle at midnight.
Although I guess you could, if something had have gone terribly wrong, not many people would have been awake to see it.
Yeah, something did go terribly wrong, actually. Not to pull it off track, but the PayPal IPN wasn't firing, so people were purchasing and not getting the product, which normally they would, through our shopping cart, they were gonna get instant download, and it was so I spent the next day like emailing people the software. I was like, oh, so sorry, what a way to start off your experience in the product, but. Well,
you know what? It just highlights the fact that none of us are perfect, and things, despite all the planning and the, I'm sure, testing you did beforehand. Stuff just happens. It's Murphy's Law of product launches.
Absolutely.
So for this first product launch, did you roll out a beta or sort of an MVP product, or was it a kind of a fully featured LMS?
It was kind of a minimal viable product. I knew a set of features I wanted in there. We did have some beta testers, but what was really useful, and this is, if anybody watching is thinking about launching a product or something like that, I found this, I guess, kind of by accident, and it worked out really nicely, is I had a competition where I emailed the list and I just said, hey, if you're excited about LearnDash or what we're going to be doing, why don't you write about it or something and then submit that article to us, and then we'll have a drawing for like the best write-up. And we had a number of people do that. And so I think I picked like 3 winners and gave them a copy afterwards. Well, then I had a list of people that had written but didn't win. Well, I knew there was interest, so what I did is gave them a huge discount on the product. Said, hey, thanks for writing about us. I mean, they already showed a commitment towards it. Here's a limited time, like, huge discount before we launch. And so sure enough, a big number of those people jumped on board, which was great because it helps offset the cost right before, the launch. But then also they were using it before we actually officially launched, and they kind of reported back like, oh, hey, this wasn't working, or we have a little bug here, whatever it happened to be, and we had opportunity to squash that before we released it.
Was the contest something that you had read about as part of a launch strategy, or was that something you kind of threw against the wall and we're really glad you did?
I think I threw it against the wall. I don't know. It was part of the getting the buzz going. I was like, how do I get this buzz going and get people excited? So yeah, it was just something that came up and worked pretty well. So I think I don't know how it works in like a service industry, but if you're launching a product, it was pretty cool.
So a question here from Devinder, and I'm going to modify it slightly, but he asked about other ideas. And I was listening to you on Troy Dean's podcast, and sounds like you're the visionary sort, the idea man. How did you decide that LearnDash, or what's now LearnDash, was what was the right thing to put your energies into versus another idea?
That's a hard one because it's easy to get distracted and pulled into other directions. Kloé, my wife, helped keep me grounded in certain areas when we were getting ready for the launch, and not to get pulled into those other areas or try to add whole feature sets that weren't maybe applicable right away. So I think entrepreneurs a lot of times get stuck in a ready set. They're ready, set, and they just don't go and press the go button. So anytime I felt like I was kind of just kept going back and crossing the T's and dotting the I's and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, it has to get out there at some point. So it's just better to get the feedback from people than try to make up in your head everything that they're going to want. So I think we tried to initially, but then when you get it in people's hands, it's pretty incredible. We get a lot of ideas submitted to us all the time, and those ideas are great. So we try to implement them where we can.
All right. I don't know anything about shiny object syndrome. I've always had excellent focus. Never. It's hard, especially when you've got the sort of the entrepreneurial bug to zero in on a single idea and carry it through to execution, and not just stay in that ready set, or even I'm going to produce the first 50% of it, because I got excited and stayed up late a bunch of nights in a row, and then I got caught by some other shiny object.
Yeah, it's easy.
Indeed. So you got the product out there, and it sounds like you were able to iterate on it fairly quickly with some with customer feedback. What's the best way that you found, or what's worked for you guys in terms of the avenue that you let customers give that feedback? Is it like a forum, or just informally email you and you keep a mental list, or how does that organized?
I think we, like on our support site, we have the ability for people to submit feedback there. In the early days, we were, I think, using like User Voice, that User Voice app or platform that lets people submit and vote on ideas. So I think we have that. Even today, so we'll have multiple avenues. Some people email us directly. We have an option for people to submit them that way. Sometimes they just bring it up in the forums, and people will say, "Oh, +1, +1, +1." You know, so we're like, okay, this must be popular. So we'll keep an eye on that, and then they'll vote on features too in this little voting section we have. So I think what we look for is not necessarily specific ideas, but idea themes. Because if you're looking for specific ideas, a lot of times people have ideas for your product that are very beneficial to their unique use case and their scenario, which as it should be. But there's a theme in that idea, and then maybe you get another recommendation or suggestion that's similar, but not exactly the same. But there's a theme there. So, an example could be early on we didn't have any badging or point system for LearnDash, and one person wants, hey, I want to give points after every lesson and then have a tally of these points that they can cash in at a later point or later time. And maybe someone else says, hey, I want this cool badge to appear after you complete a course. And they're thinking for their unique scenario, but okay, what's the overarching idea? Gamification across different triggers and elements and activities within the course. So that's ultimately what we ended up implementing.
Do you have an idea in your head of, I mean, is LearnDash, do you envision just continuing to sort of add feature set as it makes sense? Or do you ever see something that would kind of break off as something that is complementary to LearnDash, but has its own standalone feature set, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. I think we have near-term objectives in terms of features and things we want to do. Integrating with other applications obviously is never something that gets old. So anytime we can have an add-on that connects LearnDash to, I don't know, a shopping cart or anything like that, so we try to keep tabs on that part of it. Then there is, I think, discussions, especially now. It's been a few years and we've matured as a company and kind of have a general sense of where we're going, where we'd like to go, and kind of where our footprint is right now. There's other ideas in software as a service, and I think I mentioned that in Troy's podcast as well. But software as a service is more than just hosting your own software and your own plugin and saying like, okay, now you can pay me monthly for it. It has to be, in my mind, it has to be niched down. And that's something we're looking at right now, maybe in a more long term. And I think with REST API coming in, obviously we're looking at exciting ways to incorporate this. So I think those avenues will become more clear as that technology becomes more understood, I think, in the context of WordPress and implemented more fully.
So clearly, with your background in industry, you have access to a lot of smart people that are, in the e-learning space, and good resources for asking questions. For folks that might be listening that are wanting to do a little bit of their own research or maybe get some expert reviews, but don't necessarily have that network from their past, what would you recommend there?
What worked for me, I can just say what worked for me, and that's LinkedIn. And there's a lot of different avenues within LinkedIn that you can leverage. And so I say LinkedIn because I was doing these consulting days of 12 plus hours. And so I didn't have time to really jump all over Twitter and or Google Plus or anything like that, Facebook as much. I had Facebook for personal stuff, and then I had LinkedIn for professional. And so when I was first starting out, my blog posts and all that were all shared on LinkedIn, and that was kind of where I put all my energy. And in doing that, though, and joining groups on LinkedIn, I figured, I have what I want to be a professional product. I want to network with professionals, and that's where they are, and arguably, I guess they still are today. So LinkedIn's pretty cool. You can join groups, help people out, contribute, try to form your network there. I've gotten offers, and I've taken up those offers to guest write on in industry magazines for just through LinkedIn alone. So that, I think, has been one way that that worked for me that I would recommend if you're trying to network people in your industry.
That's great advice. I'm going to sort of pick in your brain in many different angles, but from a marketing perspective, what are you guys doing? What have you found that works well, and what has maybe been you wish you hadn't have done?
Yeah. Oh man, let me think on this. Marketing wise, content, anytime you can create content that resonates with somebody and helps them out. So content marketing, I think that, I hope it doesn't sound as a cop-out, because I know that a lot of people would gravitate towards that, but whether it's creating videos or podcasts or writing blog posts or whatever the content is, I think it can have a tremendous impact in getting a brand out there, getting a message across to people, building trust. I think building trust is the single most important thing you can do when you're doing anything virtually online. So in our case, selling a product. And, we have to establish trust first before, somebody in our case is going to set up their entire learning program for their site or their employees or whatever it may be. So that can be any of those avenues. So I would say before you pick an avenue, think about the market, think about who are the customers going to be. What do those customers generally do? Do they read magazines? Do they read industry publications? If so, figure out ways to get in there to build your trust, and what content is going to resonate the most with them.
This weekend, I'm actually talking at WordCamp San Diego on the subject of how writing and blogging can grow your business. And I think I'm just going to play that clip of you and just walk off the stage and just put that on loop, because it is so true that trust factor is huge, and writing is a great way to do that. And I'm glad that you pointed out to figure out where exactly that audience is and try to reach them in that space versus what's comfortable. Like for me, I'm going to reach out on Twitter and publish within my kind of own little circles, but I like the LinkedIn advice. I need to take that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ugly stepchild of the social network sometimes, but I don't understand why I feel like we launched our business on LinkedIn.
That's the title of your next post. We launched our business on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's got the alliteration thing working for it.
Maybe they can give me a kickback for that.
Well, yeah, you let me know if that happens for you. So Jackie's asking, she said, how do you see the online learning space for technology evolving, and any particular obstacles that users struggle with that might be a business opportunity for you?
Business opportunity for me.
I'm thinking maybe that SaaS offering, but you might not want to talk about that much.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying on that. That's all you get. But so in e-learning, you have e-learning as kind of an umbrella statement. It encompasses in a lot of people's mind various subsections, and one of those is mobile learning. So mobile learning is this past year, it was the first year that e-learning, from an industry standpoint, failed to increase in market net worth or value. Now they say it's X billions of dollars. It was the first time there was like a stagnation in the growth in e-learning, but mobile learning is skyrocketing. So some would say that that's e-learning still, and I think I fall into the camp that yes, it is. But the mobile learning market is huge. I mean, when we talk to people with LearnDash, they want to know like if they can use it on their tablets and smartphones, etc. And so, and they can, thanks to WordPress being as great as it is. But we're definitely going to expand in ways in the mobile learning market to be more conducive to the demands of mobile learning, which are similar but a little bit different than e-learning. So I would say within the next few years, you're going to see a rise in mobile learning. A lot of people are calling it M-learning. It's really, it first started off as maybe a sub niche, but now it's kind of becoming its own industry concurrent to e-learning. So that's pretty exciting.
In that kind of scenario, is it just that it's the same content, but just delivered in a little bit different format? Or is it sort of a reworking of how that content is consumed?
Both. So yes, to the first part, rather than people sitting at their desktop or laptop, most likely, and going through a course, they want to be able to access it from anywhere. Certainly, that's possible. But with mobile learning, there's been a rise in bite-sized learning, and so bite-sized learning in terms of the course content and how it's presented, because we're more distracted at our phones and we're more distracted at tablets. And there's studies that are showing that depending on the nature of the content, that bite-sized learning is very productive, as long as the objectives are pretty singular in nature. People can consume that on their phone really quick and perform their job or task or whatever that was teaching them, showing that they've learned something. So anything in the mobile market is going to be huge, and that's probably where I would recommend if somebody wants to get in the e-learning space. It's like, well, how can you service the mobile learning market?
And there you have it, business tip from Justin. If you're tuning in halfway, we're just thrilled to have you listening live. I've got Justin Ferriman from LearnDash Learning Management System on the show today. You can send your questions to him on Twitter with hashtag OfficeFM or over on Google using the Q&A app. I would like to take a moment to tell you a little bit more about my sponsors. We've got Secure WordPress, and that is, they're from Network Solutions, and it's a fully managed solution for your WordPress needs. So you're getting what is the web's most popular platform, WordPress, built with all the preventative measures needed to limit the risk of online threats. So basically automatic updates for your themes and plugins, malware scanning, removal, daily backups, protection against things like DDoS attacks and so forth, and also great support, which is important. And we're going to talk about that in a second, Justin. You can learn more about them over at getnetsoul.com/office hours. And then we have Pantheon. I've been telling you about them for the past few weeks. They are a WordPress host focusing in high traffic websites. They've got a great webinar that they're offering for free to Office Hours listeners that basically show you just some of the pitfalls to think about when you're building that site infrastructure from the get-go, and some resources for you to learn more about that. You can check that out at cdills.me/high-speed-sites. And with that, we will get back to our regularly scheduled program. So I mentioned support there, and whether you're in, I guess, somewhat in the services space, but especially in the product space, support is a huge consideration for, how does it fit into your overall business structure. So can you talk a little bit about what that's been like for you?
Sure. Yeah, it's support has been a challenge, but a fun challenge. And so I think it's the nature of what our product does that ultimately means that our support questions are going to be, they can be something as simple as how do I install to something that's more elaborate about how they want to present their courses and kind of the learning path they want to send users on in order to achieve a certain objective. So support, whether you're selling a product or service, I think the biggest thing you can do is just be human in support. I think we put a lot of effort into really helping our customers out with the variety of needs that they have. But I guess if I were to give a little advice in the area, is you can't be a superhero all the time. We want to be. It's okay to say that you don't know something. That's something that we have to do, and you have to set up expectations of your support. You may know the answer to a question, and you can provide that, but keep your support focused on your product, and you can help people out where possible, and but you don't want to stretch yourself too thin either, and set up unreasonable expectations. That was a problem that we had early on. Obviously, we wanted everything to work for everybody, and so we were, jumping on Skype, and we were talking with people and pulling up their sites and logging in and trying to figure out like a plugin conflict that didn't even have to do with what we were doing. So, lessons learned, I suppose. Maybe that was a little bit of overkill, and we weren't as productive as we could have been. That's
great advice, to limit your support to your product, which sounds super obvious, but so I have some WordPress themes on the market, and somebody will email you a question, and it starts off being simple, okay, this is how you configure it with the theme. But then the question grows to, okay, if I want to do this and I want to do that, and you're right, like we could share the answers on how to do that, but ultimately that has nothing to do with my product and is, maybe not even the best way to serve the customer, other than turning them, teaching a man to fish, so to speak, rather than giving him the fish. Got a great question on pricing, and your perspective on this may be different since you came from sort of outside the WordPress bubble, but within WordPress, things typically price points are generally low for products. So Defender's asking, how did you evaluate and decide on the current LearnDash pricing, and is that something that you've had to make adjustments to along the way?
Yeah, pricing's a complex science, and I don't have a degree in it, that's for sure. So it's funny because it's absolutely right that WordPress pricing is drastically lower than other industries, and we get quite often somebody will contact us and be like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I can have a learning management system that does all this stuff I want it to do, for only this price. We are using something that's $10,000 a year. And it's like, is in our case, we think, are we leaving money on the table by not being $10,000 a year? But that's obviously not our target audience, since we do have that WordPress presence. So I think, in terms of pricing LearnDash, we had to have something that was accessible. We've learned over time, I think when we first started off, I think even the re-ups weren't really a thing in WordPress at the time. So, sometimes we'll get a support ticket from that person that purchased way back at that contest at that discounted price. And it's like, oh, wow, you're still supporting, that person, or if they just have a question, that's fine. But I think obviously adding the re-up for the license has been a big part of a change that we made. I think we did that in 2015. And then now we recently this year spliced out, the different segmentation for the number of installs. So that both those decisions have been important for us, from managing expectations and support, certainly, also the bottom line, and getting something more predictable in terms of revenue streams and what to expect, so you can then reinvest that into new feature sets and other avenues. So unfortunately I don't have any formula for how to price things out. A lot of times it's trial and error, and it's okay to try stuff with pricing. It's perfectly fine. We've done it this whole time, and some people worry that if they set it for a certain price and then change it later, that they're going to get a bunch of feedback and negative feedback. And I don't think we've done that before. We've had to change things up, and we haven't heard once from anybody that. And if they did, I think one time somebody asked for a discount code to have a legacy pricing thing, and I was like, okay, fine. It was kind of within a reasonable amount of time. They were researching and took some time off for the holiday, and then we switched it. So that was fine. We were happy to honor that. But for pricing, don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah, that's a lot of folks that have come on the show, and I've asked them about pricing. It seems like it's been haphazard. Just they sort of throw it up there and see if people pay it or if people balk. Had an interesting. There's a bulk host whose name I won't share, because I do have another host that's my sponsor, and that just would be rude. But they were very on the low end of pricing for WordPress, and they were rolling out a pricing experiment. And as an affiliate, they let me know, hey, this is going to be going on. Our pricing is changing, and they basically outlined their reasons that they were going to do this pricing experiment. Well, about a month later, they came back and said, well, what we discovered was that in the US, where we have strong name recognition, nobody batted an eye at the price increase. In those countries where we don't have strong presence in name recognition, it drastically dropped sales. And to their great credit, they actually went back and did lower cost across the board. But sometimes it's just, I guess, experiment.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I think if anybody who's watching is planning on offering a service or a product to people all over the world, you have to take in consideration, you don't want to price certain markets out of being customers because of the exchange. So, I think that's probably a factor in the WordPress pricing as well, and something that we're aware of because we have an international presence.
So you mentioned earlier that those $10,000 LMS solutions, that is not your target audience. Who is your target audience?
Yeah, well, so the $10,000 and $20,000 like retainer LMSs, that's going to be for very, very large organizations. I'm talking, the ones that are in the Fortune 500 list. Who we find that LearnDash works for best is, universities or departments of a school, teachers, even professors that have classroom courses or components of their live courses in a blended learning format. Also, bloggers that just want to create a course for their followers. So certainly that's a part of the target. But we get a lot of small businesses. Some people that want to sell multiple types of courses or maybe licenses of their courses to their customers. So if somebody, maybe they're selling to businesses, so they're doing business to business, and they have a course, let's say on, sales, and they want to sell the sales course to the sales team of an organization. So they'll use LearnDash to deliver that training, and that company can then purchase, 100 seats or licenses or whatever you want to call them for their employees, and then they'll be able to go through the course. So, there isn't really like a typical LearnDash user. I've thought about it a little bit, and we do really get a variety. I mean, we have the companies, we have very large content producers. Digitalmarketer.com uses LearnDash. So it's, there's no exact profile, and the needs are varied, and I think that's what makes support challenging.
Yeah, from a marketing perspective, that's certainly challenging. Or I guess you have your various buckets or personas, and can speak differently to each of those audiences. Mm-hmm. Was that surprising to you, or did you have in mind that there would be like the LearnDash user?
A little bit surprising, I think. Particularly the, I feel like the WordPress industry is very happy to try out new themes and plugins, and so that's very much in the nature of that part of the industry. But it's surprising to see. It's always surprising when you see like name brands or schools maybe that I happen to know use it. We're in Ann Arbor, and University of Michigan is here, and it's been implemented in 2 different programs that they have at the university. So that's always surprising when you see that. And it's like, wow, University of Michigan has a really big budget. I should consider special pricing just for them, $10,000 a year.
Well, you could always offer a specific service set to go along with the product that's worth $10,000 a year.
Well, it's actually a local firm that's doing all the implementation and all that fun stuff. So they just they knew about us, so they chose it.
Well, let's talk about partnerships a little bit. And I'm thinking specifically of Rebecca Gill over at Web Savvy Marketing, and she has several of her themes that are that include styles for LearnDash, mm-hmm. Which is a theme developer. That's great. It's a great selling point for a theme to say, oh, you're going to use this plugin? Well, hey, my theme actually has already got styles for that plugin. Yeah. How did that relationship come about? Was that something that was an intentional partnership, or did it just sort of happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'll start off by saying, from a broader perspective, I know that a lot of people, when they're starting in a product or service, want to create all kinds of partnerships right away. And that's hard to do if you're not proven yet, or if you kind of haven't said like, oh, look, this is the good things that we do, and maybe we could do something together. And just think about it from the other side. If somebody's coming to you and saying like, oh, hey, we should have a partnership, and I'll give you equity, or I'll give you a cut or an affiliate cut or whatever if you just promote this to all your customers, probably wouldn't say yes, because you'd want to look and see what they've done, and what's the buzz about their product, and is there a fit. So I waited maybe a little too long to start forming the partnerships initially. I mean, we do it now on the regular, but in the case of Rebecca, I just emailed her. We were both, or she was going to be involved with the WordPress Ann Arbor WordCamp planning, and I was as well. And so I knew Rebecca did great things with Web Savvy, and I'd obviously heard about Web Savvy and the themes beforehand, but I didn't want to just shoot her a random email, be like, who is this person? So, we waited a little bit, and then I sent her a note, and then eventually she, we just got to know each other a little bit more, and she graciously created some themes that kind of highlighted LearnDash, and that was kind of the start of that process. And since then, I think, that kind of stuff snowballs. You get one kind of mutual beneficial relationship like that, and other people kind of start jumping on board as well. So there's other themes and that have done similar things.
Well, the key point I take away from that is relationships. Because I am thinking about the emails that I've received, like, hey, you should totally pimp our product. And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know you or your product. How about and I'll go look on Twitter, and like they're not following me on any social media anywhere, and I'm like, well, how about let's get to know each other first?
Yeah.
You're asking for marriage, and I'm looking for a first date.
It's a little off-putting sometimes, but you can understand that people are eager and want to get going. But I would say kind of focus internally first, get your stuff right, your processes down, serve your customers, get raving fans, and then look for partnerships.
Well, I guess sort of on that thread, let's talk about add-ons. So you're versus doing all the things in LearnDash, you've got the core plugin, and then you've got the various bits of add-on functionality. Is that something right now all those add-ons are developed in-house, or do you have allow third-party developers, or how does that work?
It depends on, I guess, what we're trying to integrate with and what the add-on's going to do. So we've seen an increase of add-ons from third-party firms. So like Membarium, a membership plugin, iMember 360, a membership plugin, both of which connect with Infusionsoft, and that's kind of their world and their sphere. They both created integrations with LearnDash on their own accord, and has proven to be something really beneficial to people that want to use LearnDash with Infusionsoft and membership. So in those cases, people create their own. Recently, this week actually, a firm called Uncanny Owl, they're an e-learning firm. They created an add-on that based on, they've had quite a few client projects with LearnDash, and they've kind of specialized in that. And that's, again, part of those partnerships. We've had the opportunity to form these partnerships and relationships with e-learning firms, and there's quite a few now that say, like, LearnDash is our LMS that we bring to clients. And we have there in Toronto, there's one in the UK, there's like one or two in the US, looking for someone in Australia. But they created their own add-on based on some of the stuff that they would implement for their clients. So in those cases, they talk with us and see what would be beneficial and maybe what they could include. But we also do our own add-ons too. And so if it's an integration, we try to make it free. If we're just integrating what we're doing with something else, with Stripe, for example, our Stripe integration's free. PayPal is built in, but that's free. We have a 2-checkout add-on that's free. So anything that's going to just let LearnDash talk to something, a third-party app, we create it generally and we put it out there for free. If it's new functionality, then it's more of a premium add-on. Actually, we don't really have many other than maybe ProPanel. So we may charge for that, or a third party may charge for that. And there's other WordPress dev firms that have kind of decided they wanted to double down in creating add-ons for LearnDash. So yeah, they charge, and that's totally up to them to do so. And we just let our users know about it. I think the add-on approach, as we know in WordPress, is pretty standard. But in the e-learning field, I think that was a novelty, and one of the reasons I thought WordPress would be great. We used to get these huge clunky learning management systems that had like everything in it, like forums, chat, various various ways to create courses and present the courses. And it was so clunky that people would become overwhelmed. And I was like thinking about WordPress, if you needed a forum, you could put one in. If you needed a chat functionality, you could put one in. And that helps keep it lightweight, helps keep users from getting too, overwhelmed with functionality. So the add-on approach for learning management systems is one that I also see now happening with the big players in the field. They're starting to separate out a lot of that functionality.
Cool. So let's talk about in the last few moments of the show. Let's discuss what I titled the show, and that is making that leap from where you were to being. And sorry about that. I got kind of just enjoying your story and
that's fine.
Your words of wisdom. When did you or when were? Well, I can't get quite the questions formed out of my head, but it's risky to go from a paycheck to, is this gonna fly? And it sounds like you did that pretty quickly. I mean, within a matter of months after launch. So can you walk through that process a little bit?
Yeah, I can just share my story. I don't know how applicable it will be to everybody, but I feel like we live in an age of, when you have the shows like Shark Tank, we live in the age of like investors, and I can't launch until I get investment money or anything like that, or some kind of connection. And my whole mantra through that process was to be my own investor. And so why would I get rid of my paycheck that was going to invest in the product, before I was ready to take it full time? So when we launched, in the January, it was 3.5 months or so before I left. So I was working these 10, 12-hour days in consulting, going to the hotel and just working on LearnDash till the early hours in the morning. And I was doing that time again every day, every week. And it gets tiring, but it should. If you want something bad enough, it's going to be tiring. That if you're not ready to work that hard, then it's probably not something you're passionate about. Maybe you should find something you have a little bit more drive for. I couldn't do that forever and be good in both areas. I noticed at work that, especially towards the end, it was going to be a matter of time before I was found out from the consulting standpoint, because I wasn't you can't perform 100% if you're, dedicated to two different things. What was nice about not quitting the job right away, I think, it's tempting to say, okay, I'm launched, I'm going to do this full time, was in those initial launches, or the initial weeks after the launch, we had things that we wanted to fix. And so I still had a paycheck that was we could reinvest that right back in, or the profits from the product right back into the product itself, rather than, trying to bolster up the bank account or anything. So that was nice. We didn't have that stress. At some point, you have to take a risk. So I think, a few months afterwards, I was getting worn out personally. So, that's when I took decided to take the leap of faith, I guess. And I knew at that point it had been around for, 3 some odd months, and we were still doing pretty decent. And I knew that we could probably do better if I was doing it full time and take that risk. And so I left. I gave 3 weeks notice to my job because I wanted to go out on a good accord. And on my exit interview, I remember I was like praising the company and all this. And so at the end, they're like, hey, if it doesn't work out, you can come on back. So I was like, all right, good. I have a safety net just in case. I think we all have dreams of like riding out on a blaze of glory from our jobs into something else. But I didn't want to burn any bridges. And, at this point, I would never go back. But it was nice at the time, at least, to have that, confidence that I could go back.
Yeah, good wisdom there on not wanting to burn the bridges. And I'm singing Bon Jovi's "Blaze of Glory" in my head right now. Thanks for that earworm. We've got a few minutes left together, so if you've got a question for Justin, you better get it in if we're going to fit it in. Before we get ready to wrap up here, I do want to invite everyone who's listening, whether you're live or catching this on the replay, go over to officehours.fm, and right there in the navigation, you'll see a thing that says enter the giveaway. Oops. And I want you to enter the giveaway because we're giving away some really cool stuff to celebrate episode 100, which is happening next week. And I've got some other surprises to share with you guys. So until then, Justin, is there anything that you would like to share that I did not ask you the right question to get that answer out of you?
No, I've really enjoyed having our conversation today. I think entrepreneurship is a fun thing. It's exciting. It's scary. Because there is no clear system for doing it. Each person's going to find something that works for them. So don't be afraid to try things out. Get inspiration from other people that have done it before you, forge your own path.
Awesome. Those are great words to end on. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. And Justin, thank you tremendously for your time. Where can people, or I guess, should I say just go find you on LinkedIn? I was going to say, if people want to follow up with you, where's the best place to do that?
It's funny, right now, if you just go to justinferriman.com, it should take you to my LinkedIn. I just set that up forever ago and I never changed it. But LearnDash.com/contact, if you send a note through there and you just put in the subject, like message for Justin or something, I'll find it. Justin@LearnDash.com is my email. And then Twitter is @LearnDashLMS, so you can tweet at us there.
Awesome. And Kelly has chimed in that she's been a LearnDash user for a long time. She loves it, and she loves that you have certificates for industries that require that. So awesome.
Oh,
little
great.
shout
Thanks,
out.
Kelly. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so I'll send you a sponsorship invoice later now that no, I'm just kidding. All right, so with that, I will...
Let's see how you work this.
I will leave everyone to the rest of their Thursdays. Thanks so much, Justin. I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye.